I'd like to welcome everyone today after a 2-year hiatus. It's great to be back in person for Kern Tech's 83rd annual meeting. I am Michael Turnseed. I am the Executive Director of the Kern County Taxpayers Association. This is my 18th annual Kern Tax meeting. I first want to thank the Board of Directors for its support, advice, especially the past chairs who have provided such critical direction and guidance. But before I get started, I'd like to say let's take a moment of silence to remember what really happened today and how significant it is in history, and remember those that lost their lives today, 80-some years ago. Thank you. Today I want to address Kern Tech's efforts in transforming Kern County. We call it making a difference. What is the difference between transformation and change? Transformation is a larger concept than change. If change is about altering something specific within the organization, transformation is about changing the entire organization. It's a process of reinventing an organization's policies, procedures, and then doing what it takes to make sure that the reinvention permeates every aspect of the organization. Back in 2005, when I was hired, I only had one responsibility. That was to attend the 42 weekly meetings that the Board of Supervisors had. Because of COVID and other things, the board now meets twice a month. But their challenges the county faces have continued to grow immensely. In 2007, we took on a project dealing with school facility financing. I know all of you look on your tax rolls and you see all the school bonds. We developed a bond evaluation process which included past and present assessed valuation, growth, available bonding capacity, and proposed and past bond performance. With this third-party analysis and suggestions, school districts quickly realized that other opportunities benefited their communities with more effective use of bond proceeds at lower cost to the taxpayers. Over the life of bonds, Kern Tax negotiated with its local school districts. Kern County taxpayers will save over $2 billion. And the reason we were able to do that is the help from Director Tim Rushing, who's been with us from the beginning on that, who did the financial modeling stuff that we could go toe-to-toe with financial advisors and show them what they wanted to show them. There's better and better ways for taxpayers to construct schools. Back in 2009, we started the Kern Leaders Academy. Kern Leaders Academy is a cutting-edge community leadership program aiming to develop visionary community leaders who recognize that a healthy business climate is necessary for a strong community. Likewise, a strong economy is essential for a vibrant community. We want to develop leaders who can act in the community with creativity and innovation. To date, we have 108 participants have completed the academy, and several of them are here today. For the record, back in 2010 and 11, we got involved with utility rates and PG&E. One of the first things we learned was in dealing with the PUC, it's nothing different than dealing with the Department of Motor Vehicles, EDD, or any other government institution in Sacramento or in California. We did go through the process back in 2010 and 11. With the help of Jess Frederick, we had a significant impact at the PUC, general rate case that year for PG&E. We worked on baseline modifications addressing interregional electric discrimination, and worked on structural changes to the CARE, not only their rates, but the funding structure. It's critically important to know that we were effective, but as in the art of war, you learn you don't want to fight a war far away from home. We found it to be a very expensive process and time-consuming, so sadly, We fully participated in one general rate case, but didn't really have the resources to fight all the time against all the nonprofits that are fully based just to do that one issue. In 2014, Kern Tax worked with Supervisor Leticia Perez and Councilman Ken Weir to start the Workforce Task Force. We solicited 20 partners to help us address the challenges of Kern County's workforce. As a result of this original 20 partners, we've accomplished really quite a bit. We've all heard of dual enrollment, which was started in 2015 by the Kern High School District. With Kern Tax leadership and some mitigation funds obtained from a solar project near Lamont, received by Supervisor Perez, Bakersfield College and Kern High were approached to create a pathway to develop new career opportunities for the students at Arvin High School. 7, 8 years later, since the dual enrollment in Kern High started, over 24,000 students district-wide have attained fully transferable college credits while in high school. Next came in 2016 was the Kern Promise. We call it the Finish in 4 pathway. We hear all the time the horror stories that it takes 5 or 6 years to get a college degree these days. The Kern Promise is simple. If the students follow the plan, they can get their AA in 2 years at Bakersfield College and their BA at CSUB in 2 years. That's a 4-year degree, something you don't hear about much anymore. Since its inception, this program has been expanded to all CSUs and many out-of-state colleges and universities. Next on the Educational Pledge and Workforce Pledge is the Kern Education Pledge. The Kern Pledge was signed by all 46 school districts, CSUB, Kern Community College District, the West Kern Community College District, charter schools, and community members. The pledge was committed to work together at one system to improve outcomes for all students as they move through the cradle to career education system. This is cradle all the way through your career. The Kern Pledge had 5 goals: kindergarten readiness, 3rd and 8th grade literacy proficiency, 5th and 8th grade math proficiency, college career readiness, and increased post-secondary participation. To accomplish these goals, KIDS was created, the Kern Integrated Data System. It is an integral part of the pledge. Every student not every student's in yet, but I think 80% of the students have been transferred into the KIDS database, where 500 data points on each student are being maintained that will follow them from wherever they start school to Cal State and beyond. It'll be a central database so people aren't worrying about transcripts or days missed. It monitors virtually everything in the student's life so the proper decisions can be made to help them be successful. In 2022, this year, the Kern Regional K-16 Education Collaborative was formed. The collaborative received $18 million from state grants to improve student progress from high school to post-secondary education and ultimately to the workforce. These projects will stream pathways in 3 occupational areas: healthcare, education, and engineering and computing, all which we desperately need in Kern County. According to local data, the focus of grant funding is on first-generation students from low-income families and students of color who have a lower completion rate of A to G necessary for admission to CSU. Through work groups over the years, Kern Community College District and CSUB have offered dual enrollments in early college to many Kern County schools. Through this collaborative partnership, the number of students with dual enrollment pathways participation has increased 600% since 2015. And just as COVID struck in 2020, Kern High was unveiling its transformed regional occupation program. The ROP is an innovative, state-of-the-art education model used with best-in-class career participation, and we are very fortunate to have it here. When Kern High back in 14, 15 started looking at expanding career education, they traveled the nation, picked out the best practices, and came back and implemented, which we're told is the state-of-the-art. People are now coming to Bakersfield to view the C-Tech and see what's going on there. So we have something that we can really be proud of and has nationwide attention. Since the complete transformation of the ROC on Mount Vernon and the opening of the Career Tech Education Center, C-Tech on Old River, Kern County Community College District now serves 2,000 high school juniors and seniors 3 hours a day in career technical training education in one of 38 different pathways. They conduct 3 sessions a day, 8 to 11, noon to 3, and 5:30 to 8:30. And they have a waiting list of 1,500 students waiting to get in. So, Brian, we need to build another C-Tech. The high-tech facilities offer schools and the students opportunity to gain experience in labs and industry-specific equipment, which helps to prepare them for the workforce. ROPE's program are founded on partnerships with business partners who guide various programs so that the skills taught are relevant to the industry standards. In addition, 40% of the students at the ROC and C-Tech participate in internships at one of over 200 businesses. The ROP is a fantastic opportunity for students to put what they've learned in the classroom to practice in a real-world setting. Circling back to the county, everyone in this room is aware of the challenges the county faces. The bandage we call Measure K is passed. While it helps mitigate current needs, it does not solve the external challenges the county still faces. I'm going to leave that to Dr. Machika to talk about later. Last week, the county premiered a new video. This is Kern County. And I'd like to share that with you today because I'm sure most of you haven't seen it yet.
This is a land of doers, dreamers and thinkers, builders, activists, artists and leaders. Whether tux or chucks, dresses or boots, in the spur of any moment, get lost in our roots. This is Kern County. More than 8,000 miles of boundless opportunity, possibility, progress, and continuity. A community woven with chemistry. Our neighbors are on a first-name basis. The melody of the Bakersfield sound unites a tapestry of faces, shaped by generations of those who have settled here for centuries. Inviting, warm, inspiring, energetic, are just a few things that come to mind when mentioning the home of the gallant, relentless in perfecting our talents, inside or outdoor exploring abundance of balance, built on the spirit of a golden empire and fueled by tradition, a place where magic happens when you stop and listen. You hear that? The gentle hum of the mighty Kern River. If you say there's a place more captivating on this earth, we beg to differ. The richest soil of a place feeding the world. Our farmers are proud people leaping into action. Our food from the ground to their hands to the place of the masses. We bow our head giving grace as we bask in our rations. This land is not one everyone can understand, but we welcome you to the southern end of California's Central Valley. Every range, every meadow, every street, and every alley. A kaleidoscope of culture that spreads from the snow-capped mountains of Tehachapi to the Mojave Desert canyons. Grounded in possibilities, boundless in opportunity, this place where we're standing. Since the Second World War, our scientists have been defying gravity, breaking barriers, powering homes and moving cars. Never backing down from a challenge, the relentless people that we are. the driving force in the world's 5th largest economy. We have no limits, revolutionizing the use of technology. This is Kern County. Resilient, steadfast, we yearn for progression. Where you see a problem, we see opportunity. Where you see failure, we see a lesson. We are travelers. Our curiosity gives us the will to roam, discovering beauty in all places, but never as fulfilled as we are in our home. Lead here, lead the world. Create here, create the world. Serve here, serve the world. Change here, change the world.
That's kind of a nice, uplifting way to end a speech. For those of you who are interested in more information, down where you came in and checked in, there's 3 different brochures there. One about Kern Tax making a difference. The second one is the course guide for the ROC and CTEC. And the final one is the Kern County Superintendent Schools College and Career Programs. It talks about 15 different industries in Kern County, the available jobs, whether you get a high school certificate, a 2-year degree, a college degree, and what the salaries are. It's a very nice, if you're planning for anybody who's looking through careers and needs to make a change, there's different places to start looking. So I think that would be worth picking up if you want to do it for your kids or nephews or nieces or friends, whoever you'd like to share that with. And if you need more information, you can always get back in touch with me and I can round down some more copies if you'd like it. In closing, I'd like to thank our members, our board of directors, our annual meeting committee, Lisa Kirch and the video production team from the CTEC, Freestyle Event Services, the staff of the Bakersfield Country Club, our meeting sponsors, those of you attending today, and our valued partners who we work with daily and who help us make a difference and transform Kern County. With that said, I'd like to say thank you and introduce our speaker today, Associate Professor of Economics at Cal State Bakersfield. He also serves as the Director of the Center of Economic Education and Research at CSUB. His primary research involves energy, environmental economics, regional economics, food security. Dr. Machika has even taught at the Kern Leaders Academy for 7 years. So with that said, let's welcome Dr. Machika, and I will do a mic change, and he'll be up here in a minute. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, and welcome to the 83rd meeting. My name is Nyakundi Micheka, and what I will do in the next 30 minutes is talk about growth and change and talk about how that's happening in Kern County, okay? So a couple of things. What I'll do is I'll start off by talking about a few experiences. I had a sabbatical. I took a sabbatical. I went to Kenya for about 6 months last year, and then came back and gonna report some of those things. And I'll also talk about, before I got here, I spent quite some time in West Virginia working on coal-related research. So I am an energy, fossil fuel person for years, and I love it, right? I know. So just to get things started, this is an outline. So first of all, I'll talk about a little bit about my sabbatical, talk about coal, and then talk about how Kern County is changing, and I'll focus on demographics, employment, housing, energy. And then there's a red number 6 there says takeaways, okay? So after each of those sections, there'll be a little slide that'll say takeaways. So those are some of the things that I'd love for you guys to go away with, okay? So first of all, I'd like to acknowledge some of the groups that have sponsored some of this work. We've done some work with the USDA, with a couple of students at CSUB, and also with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So some of these findings that I'll present here are research things that have been pulled out of this funding for from these organizations. So let's talk about Kenya. Kenya is a country in East Africa, okay? And usually there are 54 countries in Africa. And I tell people, if you want to know where Kenya is, you hold your hand like this and it's right here, okay? This is Africa and Kenya is right here. It's right in the middle, the equator. We got our independence in 1963. Population of this country is about 52 million. In California, we have about 40 million individuals. And geographically, the size of Kenya is about the size of Texas. GDP is about 100 billion. And folks speak two languages there. You speak this throughout school, English and Swahili for sure, okay? And then you speak one of the 47 tribes that are out there, okay? So that's just a general outlook, and that's an image of the country. Nairobi is the capital of Kenya. The way you have LA County and you have LA City, or the way you have Kern County and you have Bakersfield, you have Kenya and you have Nairobi. Bam, right in the middle, okay? And Nairobi is the only city with a national park, and temperature, the winters range from 55 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Is not as hot as you guys say. I've heard that, ooh, Kenya is a hot place, hotter than Bakersfield in August. No. Winters range temperatures from 55 to 75 degrees, and in the summers they range from 59 to 82 degrees. Over the years, I left Kenya in 2007, and I went back last year, and there's so many things that have changed in this place. It's now called the Savannah, the Silicon Savannah. It's very based off of, the economy has changed to one that is based off of ICT, and the ICT or the IT sector has grown about 10.8%. Very vibrant community in terms of startups and all of that stuff in the region, in the country. You can take your cell phone to Kenya, right? This little bad boy. The hardest things I had to do with this presentation is take a picture of this thing and put it on there, because I was like, I need another phone to take a picture of this phone to put it on the slides, right? So had to put a picture, and this is the same phone. You can literally take your phone right there, and you can use Google Maps, literally power it on, okay? You'll buy a little SIM card for about $1.50, which is the price of parking here downtown. Put a little SIM card, and you get access to Google Maps, and you can also get a place to stay, so Priceline, Hotwire, all those apps work. Watch Netflix if you're bored a little bit. Get on YouTube if you wanna, listen to some of your favorite songs or practice some moves. If you don't like where you're staying, you can get on Airbnb and get a different place to stay, okay? And then get on TikTok and learn how to boil eggs again, because TikTok these days has a video on everything. And if you're not comfortable with what you have, you can get on Jumuia, which is pretty much like Amazon, and you can order things online and they'll deliver them to you really quickly, because they have very vibrant community in terms of getting stuff to you. And then there's a little bubble there where I have Ring, Wise, and this, the ring.com, so you can check how things are going on here in Bakersfield, right off of your phone. Literally, I'm just talking about this bad boy right here. And then finally, you can get on an app, and there are very many Uber, Lyfts, and all that. So it's a very vibrant community, and I did not leave things that way. Things changed. They changed significantly. Finally, you realize that your phone has also, they have a mobile money transfer system, which has just changed the whole banking system. Your phone is pretty much your bank, okay? So you can go with your phone, Ryan, you can take your phone and log in and put all your money on your phone, and you pay for everything through your phone and link all your accounts from the US here to that. So it was very easy to get around, and the phone did everything. So there are a lot of changes. So spent a lot of time there, and then moved now to, grew up in Kenya, whatever, came, spent time in West Virginia. I love West Virginia. Those are fantastic human beings, just as good as you guys. And when I was out there, we spent a lot of time working on coal-related research, which is a fossil fuel. For 6 years, worked on this a lot. So in talking about coal, there's a graph here that talks or shows the number of coal employees from 1985 down to 2020. 1985, we had about 185,000 coal employees in the whole country, whole US. But as of 2020, we had about 42,000, okay? So what that black line shows there is the number of coal employees, and you can see the number has gone down, and then the orange one shows you the coal production over time. So a lot of changes have been taking place. And one thing we asked was, we got together with a couple of friends, and we asked, where are these coal employees going to? Where do they get jobs after? Because if you had 185,000 people working in the coal industry, and now you have 42, they found jobs in other places, okay? And the Census Bureau tracks that, okay? It tracks where individuals get jobs after they leave. So this graph here, which you can't really see much, it's okay, just kind of shows where the coal employees from the top coal producing states, what sectors they moved into after leaving the coal industry. So you'll find that a lot of the folks who left West Virginia, for example, ended up in the oil industry. A lot of them ended up in manufacturing and construction. So the oil industry actually absorbed a lot of these coal workers across the country, okay? And this is a study that we did, and one of the main things that people usually talk about with regards to coal is they talk about, there's a lot of environmental regulation, but that's 1 out of 5 reasons that the industry has seen the changes that it has seen today. One is advanced mechanization has taken place. These big earth movers that you see, they are now mechanized. You can control those remotely. The mines are also less productive than they used to be, right? Coal, like any other non-renewable resource, as you get more and more out of the ground, it gets more expensive to get that stuff out of the ground. So it costs a little bit more. And then natural gas, fracking came about, and environmental regulation, of course, played a big part. And then finally, the cost of metallurgical coal went up. And we worked on this study with 3 individuals. One is called Marcello Graziano, who's in University of Connecticut, and he works a lot on coal. Then you have Marta, who's in Sweden, and then you have Roger Foucault, who's at the London School of Economics, and we said, let's write a paper and talk about how the coal industry can be used to develop a community, okay? So this paper right here is hot off the press, published not too long ago, and one of the things that we found was that when you have a coal industry, when you have a natural resource industry, the revenue that you obtain from those industries can be used to develop the community that they're in, okay? Which is happening here a lot, okay? So that was one policy recommendation that we put out there. 2, focus on developing human capital. So we've talked a little bit about CTEC. There are people here called Miguel and Esteban who are running the show in terms of the cameras. So we have individuals like that who are supported by the fossil fuel industry. And then finally, we said that developing the infrastructure is a fantastic thing for developing a community. So those are some of the things, and we found that those changes took place in the coal industry. Now let's get back to Kern County. Let's get home and let's talk a little bit about Kern County. And we'll start off with demographics. At one time, this county had 2,925 human beings in 1850, okay? 2,900. And then the number increased, okay? Of course, after the Dust Bowl, we saw an increase. And between 1990 and 2020, that's about 30 years, the population doubled from 500,000 to now close to almost 1 million, okay? Significant changes took place, okay? And if we were to look at this graph here, let's look at population by race, and let's look at how changes are taking place. Now remember, the goal here is to talk about how Kern County is changing and how it's growing, okay? So if you look at the round graph, the pie chart on your left, it shows you the number of population by race, and you'll find that the Hispanic population in 2000 was about 38%, okay? And the white population was 52%. But over 30 years, those numbers have flipped. So if you were to take a representative sample of 100 people, there are about 170 people here. You took 100 people, today, the Hispanic population is about 54%, and the white population is about 38%, okay? So those numbers have flipped. So we're seeing an increase in numbers with the Hispanic population. And then the other populations, the Black and the American Indian, all those have been the same, okay? So let's continue. Now, let's start off here with population. Now let's look at population by age, and we're going to start off with how things looked in 1970, and then we're going to talk about how things look in 2020, okay, today. And if you were to take a representative sample, again, 100 people, okay? Let me see who else to check in here. Brian, you guys are here. You guys are good. So if you were to take 100 people, Brian, take 100 people in 1970, about 40% of them were between the age of 0 and 19, teenagers. And then 25% were 20 to 39, and it kind of looked like that, okay? So folks above 80 years and over were just 1% of the population. Things changed, right? People live longer, people are healthy, people, they exercise, medicine, and they do all these activities which make them live longer. And very interestingly, there's a graph here that looks very, very bad, but it has really, really cool information, okay? This looks like the central nervous system or something like that. But let me tell you what's awesome about this graph. And Rich Ryan, my colleague, came up with this data. So if you were born in 1970, right, in the whole, anywhere in California, the average life expectancy was between 74 and 76, okay? That was in 1975. Fast forward to 2020, that gap has changed. Depending on where you're born, you can live 10 years longer, right, based off of where you're born. For example, folks who live in Marin County can now live up to around 87, okay? But the Kern County life expectancy has sort of stayed the same. And this is actually some work that we're doing, which is looking at inequality. And there are a lot of things that you can get out of this, because one, someone who's living 10 years longer is collecting Social Security and Medicare for 10 additional years, right? So those are some of the things that we want to talk about. So where you're born in California, right, on average, will influence how long you're going to live, okay? So this is data that we got. Now, back to this, there was this graph that I started off with, then I went here. So of course, this graph, you see that red bar at the bottom? we're going to chop that from 40 and throw some of those, because people are having less kids now, people are getting married later, so we're seeing smaller families, we're seeing a smaller group between the age of 0 to 19, and now we need to distribute all that. So the table, instead of the chart looking like this, we're going to kind of squeeze it and make it look like a little bit like that, okay? And that's what we see here, okay? So as of today, we have a larger population who are between the age of 60 to 79 and 80%, and we have a less population who are between the age of 0 and 19, okay? So far, so good. We're good? Yes? Fantastic. Thank you. Keep it moving. So takeaways. One, current population has doubled over the last 30 years. That's a good thing, right? We have more people, access to labor. Life expectancy, location matters. And if people live longer, they collect Social Security longer and all of that. And then locally, because we have now a large population that's living longer, we need to think of ways to accommodate these individuals. So maybe we need to get more better healthcare for folks who are living longer. We need to think about the type of food that we have at the grocery store, right? Security, exercise, right? And entertainment and jobs for these individuals. So we need to think about some of those things because we're living longer. Now, employment. This graph here is very interesting because it has two colors. It has blue and orange. Now, the blue shows the employment by sector in 1990 and in 2021. There's one sector that added 100,000 jobs between 1990 and 2021, and that's the service industry, okay? Other sectors like the farm industry added about 30,000, and the construction industry added about 33,000, and so on and so forth. But that's pretty interesting, right? 100,000 jobs in 30 years just on its own. And where did these jobs come from? The bigger the box, the bigger the jobs that were provided. So the healthcare industry contributed about 26,000 additional jobs, and government sector also employed about 21,900, and you can see what was going on right there. You see this little graph here? I'm sorry you guys cannot see it, but what this graph shows is that it shows, now, remember I said the Census Bureau can track individuals who leave a job and can kind of tell you, if I worked for the oil and gas sector and I went to another job, it can tell, they track what job I went to. So if I was in oil and gas and I went maybe to construction or healthcare and all that. So this graph here shows the number of folks who left the oil and gas industry and where they ended up here in Kern County. And this looks at between the year 2000 and 2020. I'm sorry you can't read those words, but I'll tell you just the gist of what's going on. The big green is the construction sector. The construction sector in Kern County absorbed a lot of the oil workers who left the oil industry. And another big sector that absorbed them was the transportation and the manufacturing industry, okay? So there's a lot of transferability in jobs. And if you were to look on the other side with the little blue lines and colors, it kind of shows you when they went, where they went, okay? So the construction industry is a good complement for the oil workers. Housing. A lot is usually said about housing. But what I try to do is I say, okay, well, people say Bakersfield is affordable. In housing, it's affordable, it's affordable, it's affordable, right? And what this graph shows you is it shows you the price of a house, the median price of a house in Bakersfield or Kern County, and the median prices of homes around Kern County. You can see how things look like, especially when you look at Monterey, San Luis Obispo, or Santa Barbara, right? Prices go up a lot. Now, one thing I've started working with, we have some students who work on this, and I'll show you a picture of these guys because I promised I was going to show you guys a picture of them, is we track the affordability. So it's kind of like an index. So what we've done is you average the prices of homes around, and then you look at Kern counties. So if the prices on average are much higher and ours are much lower, then it makes it affordable to live here, right? That makes sense, right? Should make sense, right? So the larger the gap, the better, okay? So what we call that, I call that a spread, okay? And those two lines, the orange line shows you the median home prices for the surrounding regions on average. So the larger the gap, the better it is, the more affordable it is, okay? And the narrower it becomes, then we are not too far off from our neighbors. And what you'll notice is during the COVID era, we became quote unquote more affordable, right? Meaning our neighbors' average prices on average went higher than ours. So the COVID period was actually quite, for those of us who sell homes, we're quite comfortable, and this graph here shows what we have. I also have a graph here that kind of shows the spread, and it shows how competitive our spread is in relation to our spread with Kings County and Tulare County, okay? So far, that's where we are. Takeaways for today. Service sector added 100,000 jobs. The mining and logging workers, of course, has reduced. And then, mining workers moved to construction. And home prices spread has actually gotten larger over time. So our homes are more affordable. Let's talk about energy. And this next graph is going to show how much oil California produces and how much oil the rest of the other big oil-producing states produce. How much oil does California produce on average in a day, guys? What do you guys think? Throw any number. Trust me, this was not on my head. I had to get this. Any number you can throw out there, it's in the hundreds of thousands of barrels. 200,000. 200, close. 400,000. Good. Thank you, Robin. 400,000, okay? Texas produces 4.8 million, okay? 4.8 million, which is okay. It's good, right? That's, and when you look at the amount of oil we produce, it depends on a lot of things, and I'll touch on that. So we produce about 400,000, but you know that a lot of this comes from Kern County, okay? So having looked at this graph, let's look at a few things. The number of active wells that we have in Kern County are about 40,000, right? And the closest closest county is Los Angeles. I was actually walking around, and I met Brian, who was seated there. I was like, Brian, dude, what are you doing here? And he said, well, I'm here, and he had a story, and they're drilling a well, and I was like, wow, I was so geeked out. I had to sit there for about 10 minutes to talk about that. But this is some of the stuff that they're working on. So in terms of oil production, some of the numbers that we like to talk about is Kern County produces about 71% of the oil that the state puts out there, okay? And what does this mean? In terms of, let me go back here. In terms of oil, 7 out of every 10 barrels or 3 out of every 4 barrels comes from Kern County. Now, sitting here, I was having a conversation, actually not here, but at CSUB with my students, and they were like, how come we don't produce our own oil and make our own oil and, forget about the outside region? And I said, look, we're students of, you guys are, we're studying economics. And one of the things that we need to understand when we have this conversation is, one, the type of oil we produce varies, okay? If someone says, I grow potatoes, you're probably going to ask, what type of potato, right? There are those little red ones that they tell you just put this in the microwave and you never believe. And you put it in the microwave and you get nice potatoes, right? Then there are the big ones that you have, the russet ones that you can have steak with. And you douse all these apples, whatever that thing is, and it's still dry, right? So there are different types of potatoes, right? Still dry. But the way there are different types of potatoes, there are different types of oil that we produce, right? Some of the oil fields in Kern County are very productive. And they've been producing oil for a long time, long time. But our oil is heavier, it's more viscous, right? It's thicker, it's heavier, and it has, the sulfur content. Sulfur is very dangerous. Sulfur is S, right? Sulfur is S, chemistry, right? If sulfur goes out into the atmosphere, it meets with a thing called O2, which is oxygen. SO2. If SO2 goes out and meets with H2, which is hydrogen, you get H2SO4, which is sulfuric acid, which is acid rain, okay? So when you get oil out of the ground, you got to clean it up in a way that you get rid of all that stuff. So the more sulfur you have, right, you got to find a way of cleaning all that stuff. So anyway, I digress. The type of oil we produce here has to be cleaned up in different refineries across the country. California has about 15 refineries. I think there are about 135-ish refineries. So we need to get this oil out, transport it somewhere, and bring it back. So it's possible. We can be self-reliant, but it needs to go, the cost will change. Also, the cost will also vary depending on the labor cost. So sometimes it gets easier to just bring it from somewhere closer or bring it from a different country. So this is a story for another day, but it was interesting that we had to have this conversation. Oh, this graph here just shows where the refineries are, okay? And these refineries are different. So the oil, they all have different capabilities, and the type of cleanup job they do or breaking up process of oil they do varies, okay? I asked one of my students, it's called Lionel. Lionel, can you please go and collect data on the top 10 taxpayers in Kern County? And he went and came back and he said, oh, I said, what happened? He said, oh, they're all oil companies. I said, yes, sir. And he said 7 out of the top 10 companies are oil producers. And I said, okay, that was for 2022, 2023. Can you go back to 1985 or 1980? Go as back as you can. And he came back with the same answers all the time. What this table here shows you, green means oil companies, and then gray and white means other companies, okay? So the oil industry contributes a lot in terms of revenue in terms of taxpayers. Okay, and if you're to look at this number, so this is 2022. So this graph here is so small. I'm so sorry, but what the black bars mean, they show you the contribution of oil companies to the tax revenue over time. Okay, so you'll see that it kind of goes up and down, and then there's a line that follows it, and that's the West Texas Intermediate, which is the price of oil. In short, today, okay, over the last 5-6 years, these oil companies contribute about 10 to 12% of revenue here in the county. At one time, they produced about 29%, okay, contributed a lot towards the oil industry. This graph here, I'm just going to skip because this is another story and a half, okay? So then going on, we also collected data, and I said, guys, go collect data on our oil production. And they said, okay, let's look at oil production and poverty. And we said, okay, our oil kind of follows, you know, high poverty levels and oil. And I said, well, let's look at these numbers over time. And we find that there's a little bit of a correlation between oil and that. And we came now to this issue and said, do we have the resource curse in Kern County where we focus a lot on oil? We did a study of this and we found no. Okay? So the way the resource curse works is countries that are resource abundant tend to have economic growth that is the opposite of what we have. But our study did not find that this exists, and we move on to other things, okay? So remember, I'm bringing on things here that we've been talking about. Google searches. These are the Google searches for oil in Kern County, okay? The blue line shows the Google searches for oil, and then the other lines show what is going on in the other industries for manufacturing, construction, and so on and so forth. So we're very, very interested in this. Some of us, this is what we do for a living and we love it. And then the reserves have also been changing over time, okay? A lot of these are the reserves in California. They have been going a little bit down, but still, we still have a lot of this oil, and our oil fields here in Kern County are very, very productive. Okay, let's move a little bit forward here and talk about energy transition. So over the summer, attended a conference in Athens, Greece, and we had the Minister of Energy for France, the Minister of Energy for Germany, and they were all asked to define what energy transition means, and there were different definitions, right? The French energy minister talked about energy transition as being the move towards adopting nuclear, okay, which is something they've done successfully. German, it was abandoning the nuclear energy, but things changed a little bit, especially when we had the Ukraine war, so a lot of these definitions had to change. Okay, so when we talk about energy transition, there are a lot of topics. So there's some success stories, and then there's some countries which are trying to get up there in terms of, moving from coal to nuclear to all of that. Now, as we get to here, 12:51, good. As we get towards the end of this presentation, a lot of us Kern actually is a top oil producing country, but it's also a top solar energy producer, right? First in the state. In fact, the graph on the left, okay, those colors don't really look good, but the graph on the left, just look at the last column, it shows you the rank. So in terms of solar production, I think since 2015, Kern County has been the first in renewable energy production in solar for the last, since 2015. In terms of renewable energy production, but wind, we've been first all through. So we're leading the state in energy production, and these are some of the numbers that you can actually use, because people like to use the number of 72% for oil, but then when it comes to when it comes to solar or wind energy, we have also some numbers out there, which I thought that I would share. So some takeaways here, we know about our production and daily oil production, and we also talked a little bit about why we can produce our own oil, and some things that we can discuss. Now, looking ahead, first, one thing that we want to think about is investing in Kern County, investing in the community, right? We have, for example, students who graduate from our universities who do not want to leave the area, which is a fantastic thing. If you look at areas like Michigan, for example, it's really cold out there, so when they graduate, they want to leave. They have top tier institutions in the world. So we have a lot of students who want to stay here, so investing in these individuals, because there are people who actually want to stay here, is a good thing. Number two, local tourism. I have no idea what happens on the weekend, but if you stay on the 99, there are people who leave this county like bees. And they go to the coast and they come back on Sunday night, which is okay, it's good, right? One of the things that we want to start doing more, and I do this all the time, get people here, I say, let's go to East Kern, let's see what's out there. Let's go to Mojave and see some of these cool, because these are things that we have that are nowhere around the world, right? So we want to invest in local tourism and spend a lot more time here in the community because that grows our economy. Also, I like to say think outside the box, but actually there is no box, right? So I put a box there because I didn't know what pictures to put out there, so I just threw a little box. Right? 3 or 4, attend local events. It's so important to attend local events, right? Because you have investors who come from outside who are, with the intention of saying there's a market here for individuals. It's good to attend this, try to attend this, even restaurants. There's this notion of, oh, you know how restaurants are, everyone's so excited when it's really new, blah, 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 but then a new one opens and everyone goes there. And I try to tell people, no, go back here and promote or develop, because these are our friends, these are our brothers and sisters. If they're not cooking potatoes well, ask them to cook as well. I'm talking a lot about potatoes, I don't know why, but potatoes are good. Right? They also give us vodka, right? Anyway, invest in that, okay? And then finally, California. As a regional economist, we like to look at a few things. Now, there are always benefits and costs with everything, okay? California, complex regulation, very, very complex regulation. I'm not an expert at this, but I've read and I've done some work and I know how hard it is. Very high taxes, okay? So when thinking about doing business in this region, in Kern County, one thing you also want to think about, now there are costs, but then we have access to 40 million human beings, right? That is not easy. You can't just get that anywhere. So we have access to 40 million people. We have a lot of wealthy people who live in the state of California, so there are things that we can do to get them out here. The climate is fantastic. It's temperate. So, I mean, yeah, it depends, right? But climate is good, and also we have a large talent pool in California, so it's quite easy to get individuals here. So it's something that we need to think about. And then finally, this is some ongoing work. One is we're trying to understand, why do cities grow, right? That's a good question to ask. For example, why is Phoenix, Arizona the way it is? Why is Stockton, or why is San Luis Obispo where it's at? Second thing is to look at the economic costs of carbon sequestration. Second thing is we're also trying to study the economic costs of carbon sequestration, right? That's a buzzword, right? So what does it actually cost in terms of jobs and all of that? And then number 3, green construction, right? Very, very upcoming topic. And number 4 is energy transition, okay? Energy transition is a big topic. What does it mean? Because when you look at energy transition, you got to look at the demand side and the supply side as well, okay? There's also policy. For example, if we were to, like when we're looking at the coal example, we had workers who had to leave the coal industry and they moved to other sectors. So if you all of a sudden you have access to 500 new workers who can work in the construction industry, how does that affect the labor markets in the construction industry? Or these individuals may move to neighboring counties. How does that work? They might continue living here, but they might move to neighboring counties. So that's, there's some spillover effects and ramifications for tax and all of that. And then finally, there's this notion people are moving away from California. But when you look at the data, there are a lot of people coming in as well, okay? So we're trying to come up with this. This is just some ongoing work that we're doing with the Center of Economic Education and Research. There are more students who are going to be working, but it's 12:57. Party is over, guys. Sorry. Okay? So let's keep in touch. That on the top right is the Kern Economic Journal. It's out again. If you sponsor, fantastic, thank you. We keep our trends out there. And 2 questions. Any questions from the crowd? There's no question. Okay, there's no question. Okay, Kevin. Are we good?